Welcome back to Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, the recap of the Tour de France 2026 route presentation. It was revealed in Paris in cyclonic conditions yesterday. If you were at the Pont Maillot, whatever it's called, to get to the Palais de Congrès, there was like 100km/h winds, which was, I was thinking maybe it would be good to have a classics race on these cobbled streets right now. That didn't happen. There were a few riders there, not enough riders to actually form some sort of race. But as always, we're going to go over the route, compare it to this year's route or a normal Tour de France route that we've all watched the last few years, and discuss the wildcards a little bit, because there was maybe it's a red herring. Maybe it's a sign about which team is going to get the discretionary invite next year, and then we're going to go through the stage by stage. And yeah, I'm gonna pick winners. I'm gonna pick winners for every stage 8 months in advance. And if I get some right, actually getting a Pog one's not that hard.
It's always terrifying because on one end, we know that Pogacar is very likely going to show up for this Tour de France 2026, unless something happens in the run up to the Tour de France, but we don't want that to happen, of course. On the other hand, you've got Jonas Vingegaard, Remco Evenepoel, Florian Lipovic, the Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe situation. We don't know the exact intricacies of which riders are going to show up, but we'll try our best to do so. But if we had to guess, Patrick, then I would say that Jonas is expected to ride Giro Tour in my head. I don't know how that's going to affect the Tour de France, etc. On the other hand, when it comes to Bora, I don't want to spoil the parcours presentation here too much, but I see a parcours that actually fits Lipovic.
I actually don't really know who this parcours suits. I would say almost Roglic, because nothing happens most of the time. And there's some sprints and a TT that he'd be good at. You think
2025 Roglic or peak Roglic?
Peak Roglic, yeah. If Roglic got this route in 2020, it'd be great.
Peak Roglic isn't here anymore, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess it suits. We don't have many multi-alpines, like multi-HC climb stages. I think just one of them. That's a difference to this year. So it's a very, very, very different route to this year, except for TT kilometers keep getting banned, keep getting nerfed. I don't understand it. We'll discuss it more, but it makes no sense to me. This episode is brought to you by Morton. A word on them in a second, but winter is when the real work gets done, and winter is indeed coming, and Gav Morton to hand for your winter workouts. At the route presentation, so they changed the format a bit. Normally they bring the riders one by one onto the stage. They just brought the men and women out as a group this time. And we had Dylan Groenewegen there, who's on the Unibet Rockets. They took Tittimer out of the name, Unibet Rose Rockets. They got a new bike sponsor, and it'd be a bit strange to invite him, or maybe he was just there.
Well,
do you think he was invited, or they made him available?
I'm not sure I can read too much into it, because at first glance, no offense to the riders that were there, but I feel like the roster of riders at the Tour de France route presentation has gradually downgraded over the years. I'm sorry, but I get excited if, for example, I see Tadej Pogacar going on that stage, or Remco Evenepoel, or Jonas Vingegaard, the big stars in men's cycling there, for example, when they're presenting the men's race. That's not what's happening here. You get, no offense, Valentin Panepintre. For French people, that's probably an enjoyable guest to be there. Dylan Groenewegen is also not a peak rider that everybody gets excited about in 2025. Like, sure, he's got a very important role at Unibet Rosa Rockets now, and I think the reason you're pointing it out is because there's a potential wildcard on the table, because we've spoken about this on the last weekly show we had. There's 3 teams that get automatic wildcards towards the Tour de France. That is Tour de Pro Cycling, Q46.5, and Cofidis. But next to that, the race can also give out 2 wildcards by themselves, whether it's personal preference, politically, whether they want to do it sportively, doesn't matter. They can choose how to do that. And if I look at the rest of the pro team division, then I see Total Energy as a French team in that pro team ranks. But the other French team is Unibet Rose Rockets because they changed their license to a French license. And outside of that, Caja Rural, Burgos, Ken Pharma. I'm sorry, but these teams don't shout at me, oh, they're going to be at the Tour de France. So I think that the optional wildcards will go to Total Energy and Unibet Rose Rockets. So I am shocked that I went from, in a single year, the stance of, I don't see in any way how Unibet TGM Rockets could be at the Tour de France to, I'm certain they will be at the Tour de France. In the span of a year, due to the fact that Arkea disappeared, that Cofidis is getting automatic wildcard, that Total Energy, they still exist, but that IPT and Lotto are going to World Tour, that Lotto and Intermarché are merging together. Everything is aligning. The stars are aligning for Unibet Rose Rockets to do that. The question, did they need the Groenewegen and now Wout Poels transfer for this to happen?
I mean, well, no one cares that they have Wout Poels. Like, from a, you're not getting a Tour de France invite because you have Wout Poels, with all due respect. It's not Tom Pidcock, it's not Julian Alaphilippe on Tudor, is it?
Groenewegen?
But no. I mean, Groenewegen, I think they signed because he is their most realistic chance to get a top 5 in a Tour, or a top 10 in a Tour de France stage. They're not going to do it in an uphill finish. They're not going to do it in a TT. They're not going to do it in a puncher stage. The only way is to build a sprint train and get Groenewegen in a pancake flat sprint. Well, there's no other way.
I think that changed with Wout Poels. I think Wout Poels is a guy that can still win a Grand Tour stage. But at the Tour de France, it's difficult.
Or Tour de France, yeah. I mean, maybe, yeah. Wout Poels, maybe that changes that. So he's also Dutch. I think Kian would have been a good... Now looking at it, it would have been a good fit. Does
that work financially? Because hypothetically, Wout Poels, I'm assuming that his cost is somewhere between 450 and 700, 800K. I don't know whether he downgraded in salary, whether he wanted to make himself available for a team like this because it's a good story, etc. I don't know the behind the scenes here. But Groenewegen, the way they were talking about it in the video that they made, really well produced video, it sounded like it was 7 figures plus.
Yeah.
Then you can afford Kian. But did they know Kian was available? That is the question when they signed Groenewegen.
I mean, the Groenewegen, they showed us from ages ago. And
exactly.
Anyway, the ASO has no choice. Well, they're not going to invite Caja Rural to the Tour de France. I mean, especially after what happened a few years ago at the Vuelta. So that's just no option. And so, yeah, UnoX getting promoted, the extra compulsory wildcards, Arkea folding. I mean, UnoX didn't even think they were going to make World Tour. At the start of this year, they're like, no chance. I mean, I also said, I was like, they have no chance. Like, Q365 and Tudor are coming, like, there's going to be congestion in the pro teams, and it's just, it's all worked out for the UnoX and Unibet. Anyway, back to the route. We have, they don't really go, it's so different. It's also visually so different. No Brittany, no north of France. There's nothing north of Paris, either side. Nothing really 500 kilometers, 300 kilometers south of Paris even. We start in Catalonia. We had representatives from Tarragona, Barcelona, and I don't know. Yeah, both of them in Catalonia for the opening 3 stages, although stage 3 finishes in France. I believe they do cross the border. We then head from Carcassonne. We head west across the Pyrenees, but with only one actual Pyrenees stage. So the Pyrenees has been made, is a good stage, but they've got one Pyrenees mountain stage. They head west, then go north up through to Bordeaux, and then obviously we're going to have some sprints through there, then into the Massif Central, where we have Le Lorient, and so that's in the middle of the race, as is normal. We have a few stages in the Massif Central, then going further east from Vichy. After they go there, there's an individual time trial, and they do a couple of Alsace stages, 2 sort of mountain stages in Alsace, and then in the Vosges. Then they head south to the Vosges, and then further south to the Alps. So it's a backloaded route just from geographically. When you go Alsace, Vosges, and the Alps at the end, all in the last 7 days, you're going to have the harder stages backloaded. I forgot to say there's a team time trial to open the race in Barcelona, which is 18 Ks. The individual time trial's hilly, or got one, 9K, 4% climb, 26 Ks in the middle of the race.
Like, first impressions on just the map before we go into the individual routes. I don't necessarily mind that the Tour de France skips a certain part of France as long as it goes back to that area every now and then. And we've got a Tour de France that will start in Luxembourg in the coming years, rumored to be. So we're definitely going back to the north pretty soon. And I'd like to hope we're hitting the cobbles at some point as well again. I know it's a controversial topic, but I like to see a cobble at the Tour de France every now and then. Now, you can't read too much into the fact of, okay, we're starting over the Pyrenees, we're ending at the Alps. At the end of the day, it depends on which climbs and which stages and which difficulty level they make those stages to make them either interesting or not. But I sure as hell hope that the Barcelona team time trial start is not in the dark, because that was a bit of a problem at the Vuelta in 2023. I think that will depend on Remco Evenepoel's presence, I think.
No, it's in July, they're chilling. The sun's up until 10:30.
Well, if they start the race at 9, then we've got an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
But is there anything more we can discuss in terms of start list before we go into individual stages? Because I feel like outside of the riders we mentioned earlier, there's not much we know when it comes to the riders showing up.
No, we don't know. I mean, let's just assume it's going to be Remco, Pog, Jonas. I'm assuming there's no way Broe signed Remco to do Giro. Just Giro, right? There's just no way.
That's a possibility, I think. It depends on...
Yeah, but he'll still be here.
If there's 2 40-kilometer time trials at the Giro, then it would low-key be stupid not to do the combination.
Kind of agree. And they got Lipovitz, he can just prepare for the Tour.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think... I'm assuming everyone in the top 10 is back, so...
I'm assuming everyone is here. Every rider in World Tour.
It's the Tour de France. Poggi and Jonas said it. You have to go. You have to go. And as I said, yeah, geography or where they are dictates the kind of stages you have. It sounds very obvious, but yeah, if you start in Barcelona, you have to do the Pyrenees on stage 4 or 5. And if they don't want to end the race early, then they have to make the Pyrenees kind of, not too many mountain stages there. And then if you're not going to the north of France because you've started in Catalonia, then you're not if you're not in Brittany and you're not in the north, you're not going to have many punchy stages, and we don't. There are almost no puncher stages except for at the start.
I think that's fine going to the Pyrenees in week 1 and making it a lighter version because of your starting area. I think that's perfectly fine. It's more that I feel like when I look at this map, there's areas where I feel like there's a lot of potential for stages, like the Central Massif. We've had amazing stages there. We'll get to it later. I feel like it's a slightly worse stage than it could have been. And we'll get into the in-depths there, and there's a few moments like that I have when it comes to this parkour, but there's also moments where I feel like, okay, this stage sounds a bit underrated maybe. So my overall review I'll leave for the end of this, but I think it's time we get started when it comes to our stage by stage review, and I'll let you do the uneven numbers, Patrick, because you look so happy today. So stage 1 is yours, my friend.
I'm actually in a good mood today. I'm in a good mood today. Yeah, it's I don't know why, but before we get into the stages.
Oh, were we both going to do a segue?
I was going to do a segue. Yeah, it has nothing to do with my mood. But as I said, this episode is brought to you by Morton. Winter's coming. Group rides are getting smaller. Maybe you're indoors a lot, but the fueling challenges remain the same. Morton's hydrogel system, gels, drink mixes make it easier to fuel consistently, especially if you've got back-to-back sessions. I remember this time last year we were having the Masterclass series, and Sim Podlegar spoke so much about how you should even fuel for tomorrow, and I've really taken that on board. And if I've got a big run tomorrow or a race coming up later that day, I make sure that I'm fueled up for that. And if you're going to do long endurance rides in the winter, I'm about to be doing a lot of long endurance rides in Australia very shortly. Thank Christ. Going off to Australia. So yeah, this winter, I know there's a winter read for all of you in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm avoiding winter as usual.
Bro is flexing on us in an ad.
Abusing the listeners in an ad read. I was thinking like, how much Morton can I take in my check baggage? And before Mrs. Rouge gets really angry. But yeah, I'll be doing a lot of long endurance rides where I mix between drink mix and the solid bars to keep the carb intake steady. So if you want to get 20% off your first order at Morton.com, you can go to use the code LRMorton2025. That's at Morton.com to get 20% off your first order. Okay, stage one, like Benji said, I get to take it away. We have a team time trial. Once again, I don't get it. I just don't get it. It's from Barcelona to Barcelona. The logistics for the teams, for the organizers, for everybody, the logistical effort for a 19K team time trial is identical to the logistical effort of a 35K team time trial. You still have to prepare the time trial bikes. You still have to have all the timing. The event itself is 15 minutes longer. 15 minutes longer, and you get to see the big stars for longer in the city. Why is it so short?
Good question. 19.5 kilometers, the first 15 of which is relatively flat, and after that we've got 4 kilometers of up, down, up, the Côte de Montjuic, down again, and then up towards the finish line, which I think is the exact same finish as stage 2 of La Vuelta 2023, which was a road stage, of course. But I just look at this and I see a very city circuit team time trial as well, which I'd rather see my team time trials in like open long roads where you can actually have the aerodynamic effect of a team time trial instead of teams desperately trying to get around corners without crashing, etc. I feel a bit icky about a city team time trial. I agree that it should be longer, but I think there's also the reasoning that the Tour de France ASO probably wants to make sure that the super teams don't have a massive advantage on the smaller teams, and maybe that's why they limit it. But I'm just grasping. But it's also a gimmick time trial, where we're not talking about the usual team time trial of 4 riders need to cross the line and their time counts of the 4th rider. We're talking about the Paris-Nice strategy of team time trials. So it's the first rider. Well, every rider's individual time counts is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, every rider sets their own time.
So this means that a team like UAE Team Emirates could get away with just doing a full-on lead-out for Tadej Pogacar to launch him on either the last climb or the second last climb in the last 5 kilometers. That's a realistic strategy here. I don't know. On one end, that is fun every now and then. But on the other end, I've got this feeling of it's a team time trial. The whole point is that you have to work together as a team to make it work. And yes, you're working together to launch your rider, but it's not the same. So I don't often agree with Richard Plugge, but he was pointing out that this is basically a team lead-out time trial. And it's true. So
and they always finish them uphill.
Yeah, because they want to be able to have you launch their leader.
And so, crucially then, it would be much more interesting to me if you have a very small climber, and I think we did see this, and it's a flat finish, and a big unit can go faster to win the stage. Then it's more interesting to me because it's like, does Van Aert have to wait for Vingegaard if the stage win is there? When it's uphill, it's just like you just launch Vingegaard.
I don't think that example would happen, but I think another good example would be, what if there's a hill in the middle of the time trial? What if there's a hill in the middle of the time trial that forces teams to decide, do we launch our leader or do we stay together over the climb? Then there's a tactical
that's more interesting to me.
We don't have that here. But then again, the Barcelona finish after Montjuic, pretty cool finish for touristic purposes. And I think we sometimes overlook the fact that the organizers sometimes think that way when it comes to a stage like this, stage 1 in a Barcelona, which is basically, is it fair to say, the second capital of Spain?
Yes, the capital of the Mediterranean, apparently.
Capital of Catalonia? That controversial?
No, it's definitely the capital of Catalonia. Well, actually, maybe it's
Girona,
technically.
people would disagree.
No, I don't think they would.
I don't think so.
Maybe is capital of. I mean, Lleida might be bigger than Girona.
Who?
Let me check. Lleida.
I've never heard of that in my entire life.
Yeah, there's no real reason to have. But yeah, it's a 19K team time trial. I think the gaps are going to be really small. Like, it's going to be decided by seconds, and it's not really going to change. And like you said, all the big teams are the best time trial teams, except, I mean, I disagree. I disagree with the notion that team time trials only benefit the rich teams. They do. But we've seen Movistar do very good team time trials. We've seen Jayco do excellent team time trials. And so I think it is also a discipline where with training, skill, a good plan, you can actually have a chance for another team to win a stage.
I fully agree with that. But I believe that the standard rule is that more money equals easier to prepare for these kind of events. But you're right that exceptions definitely exist. And we've seen that in numerous ways where Green Edge back in the day was so good at this. They never had the best budget, etc. They just were Australian, and Australians do really well at team time trials, right, Patrick? But anyway, it's time to pick our winners.
Paris this year, they were 15 seconds behind Visma starting with 6 riders, and they didn't have Durbridge, who crashed out. They would have won that team time trial if they had Durbridge.
UAE famously had a pretty bad time trial that day. Who do we see as the winner for this team time trial? Because Visma Lease Bike should be pretty good at it, but I kind of expect UAE Team Emirates to also be good at it.
If you're Ineos, don't you bring Tarling and Ganna just for the first week?
But what if the Giro has 2 long time trials? Do you send them to the Giro and then just to stage 1 of the Tour de France?
Probably not.
Ganna did that this year, to be fair.
Who do I think wins this TTT? UAE.
I also think UAE Team Emirates. I think Pogacar is in yellow after stage 1.
Because it's technical. I think if it was a big open plane TT and you got Van Aert, Laporte, maybe Affini, Armirail, I think that...
Laporte is back.
Laporte's fucking back, yeah. But I think because it's technical, then I think that suits UAE more, and then the punchy finish, Pog could go crazy and take back 5 seconds. Okay, you take us to stage 2, Benji.
So stage 2 is 178 kilometers, starts in Tarragona, which I'd like to believe is just next to Barcelona, and it finishes in Barcelona. The first 80 kilometers is flat, but then we get one of the only punchier stages, I would say. Halfway the race, we start with a longer climb, 6 kilometers, 5%. Then with about 50 kilometers to go, there's another one of those, 7 kilometers at 5%. But the last 30 kilometers is 3 times the same climb, which is the Côte du Castel de Montjuïc. So it's the Montjuïc climb that we know from the Catalunya last stage, that we know from the team time trial the day before the second last climb. It's a climb we all know. And if I look closely at the finish line, do we know the exact last 5 kilometers? Because I see the Montjuïc climb top with about 3 kilometers, but do we finish on the same finish as stage 1, the team time trial, or is it just a descent finish? Can't be a descent finish, right?
No. It's a 600 meter 5.5% finish. It's the Olympic Stadium hill finish.
So the same as the team time trial. I'd like to believe. Similar.
Not sure. Probably.
Well, let's go with similar.
This is a punchy finish. This is like a lot of different guys could win this. It could be a Gregoire, a Vauquelin, Van der Poel, Pogacar, Van Aert, a whole host of different riders.
Who won this in La Vuelta 2023? I swear the stage existed. Was
this the one won by Krohn that was neutralized?
Ooh.
Could be.
I'm trying to figure it out.
I think this would be a good stage because you'll see You'll see maybe Trek going for Pedersen, Lotto Intermarché for Binny or DeLee. I think the reality is that climb's too hard. And
yeah,
what is it? It's a mile at 8% with a 200 meter 13% kicker. Yeah, to me, that's Gregoire, Vauquelin, Pogacar, Vingegaard territory. So
I think this is Tadej Pogacar winning stage 2 of the Tour de France 2026.
Yeah, with a lead out from Narvaez.
Yep. Is that boring that we chose UAE and Pogacar for the first 2 stages?
Actually, I'm thinking.
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's probably what happens. It's just a simple thing. No, it's not boring. It's reality. Narvaez also could win it, frankly. But it's a good finish. Stage 3, they go from Catalonia long stage, 196 Ks from Granollers to Les Anglaises, which is in just over the border into France. It's a long mountain transition stage, but with soft climbs. They start with like 16K or 25K sort of gradual uphill, then a valley. Then they do the Col de Torzes, which is 9Ks at 6.5%, but really it's 4Ks at 9% at the end. That's about 60, 70Ks from the finish. Then they go down, go through Alpes and Puigcerdà. Then they go up some softer climbs to cross the border. The Col de Calvaire, 15Ks at 4% descent. And then the finish is 1,700 meters at 7.6%. So it's a puncher finish after a long ass stage. This is screaming break to me.
To me as well, because you've got that climb at the start that really could blossom breakaway formation. You've then got a period until the climbing starts where that break can get a gap, and once the gap is there, the gap will remain, and then you've got Tadej Pogacar that may not want to have the yellow jersey on his shoulders the entire 21 days for the fact of, okay, control
there ain't
kind
no
of
way.
vibe.
There ain't no way they're controlling 200 Ks for an uphill sprint against Gregoire. It's not that hard to finish.
I don't see that either. So this is breakaway to me as well. But well, can we talk about the fact that we're crossing the border from Catalonia to France and we're skipping Andorra? Did the money dry up after the Andorra criterion?
It must. They spent the Andorra criterion money on that instead of getting a stage next year.
I don't know who's winning this, by the way. Breakaway stages, to predict that 8 months out, I'm sorry, but I've got no clue yet.
Breakaway. Who's allowed? I would sign Victor Lafay. I would sign Victor Lafay for this one stage. I give him minimum salary, but he gets a huge bonus if he goes in the break on this stage because he'll win.
Did I read he was gonna sell cheese in Japan, or am I inventing that shit?
Something like that. So this is great.
That is fascinating.
Stages 2 and 3 are really good for Lafay. Pedersen can win this stage. Healy, Simmons. I'm going to go with Quinn Simmons.
Imagine if Ciccone is in this race and loses time on stage 2 to go in the breakaway on stage 3.
No. Trek will pull the peloton in this stage.
I'm telling you, this stage is won by... Imagine if Tom Pidcock's here and loses time on purpose to go in the breakaway on stage 3.
No, that'll pull as well for Pog win. Fuck. Can we please, nobody, just don't pull. He has Narvaez doing a lead out, dude. You're not going to win.
Am I really supposed to guess a winner from this 8 months out? Clement Brazafonso.
No, it's Quinn Simmons.
Bruno Armirail.
Yeah, I like that. Could be a good one.
That's my pick for this.
Quinn
if
Simmons,
he doesn't lose time on stage 2, I'm going to go squeeze him like a towel.
Who?
Bruno Armirail?
I mean, he's not a GC rider. He's allowed to take the jersey.
He's a danger for everybody. What? Wasn't he the guy that people were chasing?
UAE wouldn't let him in the break.
I swear there was a stage where someone was chasing a breakaway with Armirail.
Visma
for some reason.
Visma didn't let Armirail take the jersey in the Vuelta. He was going to take him Visma pulled.
Oh no. Horrible. And then he goes to Visma. Why is there no grudge?
I don't know, man. But yeah, I think maybe some team, there always could be some team, I think with the uphill start, this has to be break. All right, stage 4, Benji.
Stage 4 starts in Carcassonne. I swear there's usually sprint stages there, but this time we start with a versatile stage, I would classify it. Two fois, 180 kilometers with 5 categorized climbs. So that's a lot of climbing on paper, but I'm talking 3 relatively easy climbs in the first half. 9 kilometers, 3%, 4 kilometers, 4%, 6 kilometers, 4%. In the middle of the stage, there's the hardest climb, or the longest climb, I would say. 11 kilometers, 5.5%. And then there's one more climb in the last, with 40 kilometers to go, 5.6 kilometers, 6.8%. These are not impossible to survive stages for some of the more versatile sprinters, I would say, but there is terrain to drop a pure sprinter, though, if someone really tries.
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty hard. Like 7% for 6Ks. If you're Trek, although the whole route doesn't scream Johnny Milan to me, but
Nah. Pedersen.
It's a pretty hard, and the break, I mean, you got 11K, 5.5%. I think this is a sprint. It has to be because they've had 3 stages where they've been denied so far. It's a sprint, but the teams like Trek, maybe Visma for Van Aert, Lotto for De Lee or Binny.
For Van Aert. Not Matthew Brennan. Come on.
Dude, Brennan would win stage 1, 2.
The team Dow trial.
Yeah. And
individually,
3,
he would win it.
3, he can win against Pog from the peloton, and then 4 as well. 5, yeah. So like, fair enough. I think a versatile sprint team goes absolutely apeshit on that climb and drops Merlier.
Okay, I don't think they'll drop every single sprinter like that. I think Philipsen could survive that stuff like that. So
Philipsen will survive. I mean, Philipsen will survive it, but I don't think they'll be the ones pulling. They also,
I think he's the one winning, though.
Who's fast? Yeah, I'll go Philipsen.
We don't know who's fast yet. We haven't done the cycling awards yet, Patrick. Come on.
I don't think Merlier survives this.
If he wins, you owe him a coffee.
I'm going Paul Magnier. I changed my mind.
I like the call. I'm not sure he'll be here.
You don't think?
Because he had a failed Giro, I would say. I think they'll send him to a Giro or Vuelta, which, to be honest, I still think he should have gone to the Vuelta, despite his success at Slovakia, etc.
Yeah. Who are you picking?
Philipsen.
Okay. Next stage, stage 5. We are going now east to Pau. Pau has to have a stage. It's the law from Lannemezan to Pau. It's also, we do have some punchy hills here. It's a pretty soft start, though, so I'd say you're going to get a pretty weak breakaway. That'll be controlled by the really big sprint teams. We have a collection of 3 climbs back to back to back across 10Ks. They're all about 1K to 1.6Ks long, 5 to 7%. I also think here, people are going to try to drop Merlier. I mean, especially the way Milan was climbing in the back end. Milan should never be dropped on these collection of 3 climbs. The day before, I think you can drop him, but here he shouldn't be. But I think they're going to go.
Patrick.
Yeah, I know. It's not looking good. So and they got 26Ks to come back. I'm going Milan. Milan will win this.
Jonathan or Matteo?
Jonathan, yeah.
I can do that now. Okay, I'm going for... I think Milan's a great pick. I think Merlier, I'm not super confident that he'll get over this 100%. The question that I have is, if the parkour doesn't shout Milan, will he even be at the Tour de France?
Yeah, but I mean, Pedersen's not beating Philipsen in this stage.
Yeah.
But the stage before, Trek can make it so hard on that 15-minute climb that maybe... Yeah, but Pedersen's bunch sprint this year has not looked good.
I agree. I'm going for Arnaud De Lee for stage 5.
Oh, that's a nice one, yeah. Stage 6, our first mountain stage.
Okay. Once again, starting off in Pau, so we start where we left off, and it's a stage of 186 kilometers. I swear I've said that number 3 times already in this podcast, but this is actually a mountain stage. The first 100 kilometers is basically flat, but the first proper climb starts then. We've got the Col d'Aspin, 12 kilometers at 6.5%, followed by the Col du Tourmalet, Patrick, 17.3 kilometers at 7.2%. Epic climb, always. And then we dive down, and with about 19 kilometers to go, we go on to the final climb, 19 kilometers at 3.7%. I've got a hot take for you, Patrick. Very hot take. I would have absolutely loved this stage design if it started with a climb at the start of the race. That would have made it near perfect stage design because it reminds me a lot of Giro stages with a big mountain before a smaller mountain.
Yeah, but I think they don't want the break to win.
Yeah, but I want a fight across the entire stage.
So they basically, when it's a flat start like this, it's really hard to get the break going, and then it's really hard for an actual good climber to get in the breakaway, and then the break's smaller, the climbers can't get an advantage, and then you can just put Niels Pollard on the front to manage things. So that's why I think they start them like this. Luke also says there's no hard climbs around Po.
Make one.
Yeah, make one. The Dutch did it with the
Van
Vanberg.
Berg.
Yeah, make one, I would say. They got the money for 2 starts and finishes of stages every year.
They've got 100 million revenue per year. They can make a fucking mountain, okay?
Yeah. The Pyrenees are right there. So
Profit, sorry, not revenue.
Po.
ASL.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure Bo can afford to make a mountain.
I actually like this stage. I like having a really hard climb and then like an uphill finish. I think the Tourmalet is so hard that like some team has to try, and then you do have an uphill valley afterwards where you can attack. Or, I mean, if Pog is solo Benji against Vingegaard 1-on-1 on like a 4% uphill, he has a big advantage.
For sure. Certainly for sure. It's also a stage where it's valuable to try and get a satellite ride over the Tourmalet, which will be very difficult because of the fact that there's no climb at the start here. So that's partially why I wanted a bit of a bump in the road before we have a breakaway formation, because that would allow the ability to send satellite riders out the road, make it a bit more interesting towards what could happen after the Tourmalet. I still think this will be a banger of a stage. I think we'll see activities on the Tourmalet. Sorry, this era of cyclists don't look at the Tourmalet and say, "Ooh, Tourmalet, we don't do anything here." That doesn't happen here. So we'll see action. We'll see fights between the best, and who is going to win this stage? I'm afraid I'm going with Tadej Pogacar. Or do you think break?
I think the break is controlled. I think the most likely scenario is the break is controlled by a GC team. There's action on the Tourmalet, and the GC riders neutralize each other, and then it stops in the valley.
Rides off.
It stops in the valley, and a guy like a Seixas rides away. Yep.
Okay.
But UAE will have Almeida or Del Toro. I think Del Toro wins this stage.
Ooh, good pick. I'll allow
They
it.
attack with Del Toro on the false flat uphill, and then Visma have to control.
No,
so
I think that's a very viable pick. That
stage
brings us on to
7,
stage 7. Yours.
From Hagadmal to Bordeaux, 175 k's. It's an absolute flat sprint stage, and Tim Merlier is winning this.
Tim Merlier is winning now. At stage 8, we've got Périgueux. Did I pronounce that correctly? I think I did. I'll go with it. Finishes in Bergerac, once again flat sprint stage. The winner of this is going to be Tim Merlier.
Yep. Stage 9, 185 k's from Malemort, Bad Death to Ussel. 185 kilometers long. This is a hilly stage. I think it's over 3,000 meters of climbing. It's in the Massif Central. It's not that hard. There's no GC action one would expect. A really, really strong team could control this for a sprint. For Mads Pedersen, for Binny, for De Lee, for Van Aert, Matthew Brennan. And but Ben Healy will have other ideas, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also, this is the kind of stage where I expect Wout van Aert to try and join the breakaway. And if he's in the breakaway, bottle it.
Intermediate sprint
That's what
points.
I'm looking at.
These sort of stages are key for the green jersey battle, and there's talks that there might be 2 intermediate sprint points because they really don't want Pogacar to win the green jersey.
Utter woke nonsense. Make it 20.
It is woke nonsense, yeah.
No. They need to make it 20. Imagine an intermediate sprint every 15 kilometers in a sprint stage so that the sprinters have to decide how much they're willing to invest into each intermediate sprint to have some energy left at the finish. Just do it for one stage. Absolute chaos.
That would be cool. Yeah, like a golden 15 kilometer every 15
a golden
kilometers.
Stage.
Green. The reason Pogba won the green jersey is because they kept making 50-point stages on fucking GC stages, like the Murder Britannia or something. It's like... And then Van der Poel's also like... Van der Poel refused to win the green jersey. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this is, I think, an important stage for the green jersey battle. I think it's going to be Tim Wellens. Nah, it could be. It's going to be someone like Tim Wellens, Quinn Simmons, Pedersen, Van Aert in the break, Campenaerts, Healy, that sort of rider. And it's hard to... It could be any of them.
My head shouts Simmons, but the reality of the situation is that I look at this stage and I say...
Oh, he'll be chained to Pedersen.
These are one of the only stages present in this race where I feel like there's maybe 2 of them. Ooh, did we skip the existence of Mathieu van der Poel for the stage 2 Barcelona finish? Or do we just think he's not going to show up because of the race?
I reckon
that's my assumption.
I reckon he might not do it because there's not enough in it for him. But and also because of the TTT. He's not taking yellow on stage 2 after the TTT, right?
No,
they're not going to be within 10 seconds.
It also reduces the lead out of Jasper Philipsen, though, if you don't have Mathieu van der Poel here.
True. I don't think there's that much for him here.
I agree. But I agree in that sense, but it is such an addition to the team to have him just for lead-outs alone.
Yeah, I know. But there's... Yeah. Anyway. I think it's going to be one of those rouleurs. Then we have the first...
Wait.
Yes.
Are we 9 stages in and you have not said to our audience that Raul Garcia Pierna is going to win a stage?
Oh, yeah. Which one's he winning?
Stage 10. Let's talk about it.
Stage 3 looks really good for him.
Stage 10 is 176 kilometers in the Central Massif Central, don't know how you say it. We've got Aureliac as the start. The finish is Le Laurent, which we've had that finish before. We've got Puy-Marie in this stage. If you don't know, Puy-Marie was the climb we had in 2024 before we had the other climb that I don't remember the name of, where Vingegaard ends up beating Pogacar in that stage. But we also had Puy-Marie way before that on a stage finish between Daniel Felipe Martinez and... Who was he fighting on the first time we saw Puy-Marie?
Schachmann and Kemna.
Schachmann and Kemna, yes indeed. But this stage is basically relatively flat for the first half. The second half is where I would classify some medium mountains begin. We've got 6 at 7% midway the stage, and we've got 3 kilometers at 6% just after that. Then we've got a climb of 6 kilometers at 5% just after that. But I would say the final starts with 40 kilometers to go. You've got the Puy-Marie Pas de Payroll climb. It is the easier side of that climb. It's 7.8 kilometers at 6%, but the last 2 kilometers are 8.8% average. So there is a jumping plank in that climb. And after that, you've got 2 more climbs. The Col du Perdus, which is the second last climb with 20 kilometers to go. That's 5 kilometers at 8.3%. And then finally, we've got 1 more climb with about 5 kilometers to go. I'd say 3.5 kilometers at 6%. So there's 2 jumping planks in this stage. You've got the Puy-Marie climb to do so in the last 2 kilometers, or the Col du Pertus to do so. That is how I perceive the stage. At first impressions, I was a bit disappointed in this stage because I felt like climbing the easier side of Puymari. I feel like there's more possible in the area of Massif Central, but I still think the last 40 kilometers will be action-packed and very entertaining.
Why take one of the best stages of the last 2 years, replicate it 90%, but make it worse?
Yep. That's also my take.
It was 211k, so it was an hour longer in 2024. Did that contribute to Vingegaard coming back and Poggi getting tired? Maybe. Did the Puymari being so hard and Pogacar attacking like a madman there early? You know, like, they just kind of made it just a bit worse. So I think is Pog going to control this? Is UAE going to control? Because, like, no one's delusional anymore, right? Except maybe Bora, that they are going to control this stage to win from the peloton apart from UAE. Are they going to control for this?
This is a Ben Healy stage victory for me with a GC action
Healy,
behind.
Yeah. It's a soft finish though. But if you go on Pertus, yeah.
Yeah. But Healy never goes on the final climb, so.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about that.
GC wise, what do you think happens?
I expect GC action from at least Col du Pertus, maybe on Puymari.
I think it's a good stage, yeah. If you're like an Oscar only to attack Lipovitz, I don't think it's a great stage for like Lipovitz. And
yeah, it's weird because the stage where he had difficulties last year was a stage where Kampenaerts in the descent shredded it behind the motorbike. That's how he got gapped in that stage as well.
Like technical.
So I'm not sure a medium mountain stage is really the trouble of Lipovitz. I'd expect him to do okay here.
Stage 2 in Barcelona, he might lose 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Hard to go. Ben Healy, hard to go past him.
Okay. You can go to stage 11, my friend.
Stage 11 from Vichy to Nevers. It's absolutely flat sprint. Vichy, yeah. It's a flat sprint stage. Vichy Catalan, yeah.
No free ads.
Water. No free ads. But please send me more sparkling water, the flavored one. Yeah, it's a flat sprint stage. I'll go with Johnny Milan.
Okay, I'm going with Tim Merlier. Sorry, I'm just picking him every time. Stage 12 is a flat sprint stage, 180 kilometers. Tim Merlier.
I'll go Tim Merlier for this one. And again, yeah, like the Pedersen Milan thing is quite interesting to me.
Well, there is 2 little hills in the last 20 kilometers, the last 40 kilometers, but we're talking about 3 kilometers, 4%.
No. I more mean, do they bring both?
Like, the more I go through this parcours, the more sprint stages that I realize that there were. I thought there were less when I first impressioned this race.
No, they've just they put them in, like week 2 has 2 absolutely flat sprint stages. So.
And week 1 as well on stage.
Yeah.
7 and 8. So that's technically week 2, but.
Stage 13 is what we would call, it's 205 Ks from Dole to Belfort. Is Belfort on the Dole after the Wolf of Wall Street, and it's got flat for the first 150 kilometers, then a 5k 5% climb, a warm up, and then they do see, that was a good one. Then they do the Ballon d'Alsace, which is 9k's at 7% or 6.8% descent. Also, like downhill valley, there's a 800 meter 5% kicker with a little punch. I love these. With 4k's to go, I really like those sort of additions. And then it's a flat finish in Belfort. This is what one would describe as a versatile sprint stage.
Oh.
I go Van Aert.
Versatile sprint stage or breakaway stage. But the flat makes it easier to control. The length makes it harder to control. It's still 200 kilometers. So that's how I perceive it. Obviously, if you want to win the stage, if you're in the peloton, you got to catch the breakaway before the top of the big climb, I would say.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't, good luck catching them afterwards. I have absolutely no clue who's going to win this stage. Versatile sprinter.
It's Pedersen or Van Aert.
I'm trying to find a pick that is not those names, but I'm not finding it. So I'm going with Mess Pedersen on stage 13 here. Like, again, we don't know if Milan shows up. We don't know if Pedersen shows up, but I don't give a fuck. We're predicting 8 months out. So we were allowed to be wrong. Stage 14 is it's a mountain stage, Patrick. We've got mountain stages here. It starts in Mulhouse. It finishes on La Markstein, 155 kilometers. Not the craziest length, but quite a bit of climbing in it. We've got the first climb starting with 14 kilometers into the stage, which this basically means that you'll have this dynamic of rouleurs going up the road on the flat in the first 14 kilometers, and then climbers eventually making the actual breakaway on the climb itself, because it's a big first climb, the Grand Ballon. It's 22 kilometers at 5%, but there's steeper portions in that. I think the last 6K is 7.5%. And then we go downhill. The second climb is the Col de Page, which is 10 kilometers at 5%. So again, not the craziest climb. Then the Ballon d'Alsace, 10 kilometers at 7%. And then we are basically with 50 kilometers to go after that third climb. And in that last 50 kilometers, we've got a smaller climb first. Oh god, I have to put my head sideways here. The Col du Schirm, 4 kilometers at 5%, followed by another small climb, the Col du Hunsrück, which is 4 kilometers at 5%. Then a small flat section of 7K before we start the final climb. And the final climb is actually a climb I had never heard of. The Col du Hague, or Hage, which I had literally never heard of that. It's a combination of 2 climbs in a row. And I don't have the exact length of both climbs together, but I think it's, let me calculate for a second. I think it's 10.9 kilometers, 7%. And then we've got flat until the finish for the last 5 kilometers. So I think this is, first climb shouts, breakaway formation, lots of riders trying to go in the breakaway. But it's also an 11 kilometer climb at 7%.
You got to know the answer,
Benji. To break, what?
The climb is named after a Dutch football manager, Erik ten Hag.
Don't tell me it's named after Ten Hag. I'm not having this shit.
Therefore, who won? Who won the last stage like this? It was stage 15 of the Tour de France 23, when Wout Poels dropped to Wout van Aert and Marc Soler on an irregular Beaujolais, on an irregular climb where it was 3Ks at 10% at the beginning. Wout Poels is winning this stage for the Rockets.
I swear there's a similar stage that Leonard Kemna won against Carapaz.
It is. That one was... These are more irregular because that final climb is in 3 steps. It's 3Ks, 9%, break, 3Ks, more climbing, and then the last mile is at 10.5%. So it's...
I stopped saying mile. I'm not having this shit.
I'm too lazy to say 1.6Ks.
With your imperial nonsense. Is that imperial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, Pogacar can win. That's what it goes without saying.
Remco Evenepoel wins from the breakaway after doing Giro GC.
And falling out.
Not being able to sustain GC activities at the Tour de France.
I think, break wins. I think Poels wins. Stage 15, quite an interesting stage. 183.5 Ks from Champagnol to Plateau de Solaison. We saw the Solaison in the 2022 Dauphiné when Vingegaard waited for Roglic and O'Connor was third. It is rolling at the start. There's no like big climbs at the start, but then there's 130 Ks in a very, very hard climb, 7.6 Ks at 9%, the Col de la Croisette, or it's called Le Salève. It actually is like Marie Blanc. It's like 25 minutes, 22 minutes, and the last 4 Ks are 11, or last 4 Ks like 11.5%, or 5 Ks even. So very similar to Marie Blanc, which was in the 2023 parcours. You then do a descent, a 3K, 7.5% climb, then a rolling downhill of 30 kilometers before you do the Solaison, which is very, very hard. 11.6 Ks, average 9%. The start is harder. Start averages for 3Ks like 10%. And I think this is a pretty good stage, assuming something happens on the Le Salève climb.
I have the same opinion because I look at the stage with a breakaway formation factor at the start where there's enough climbing to make that interesting. And then like you say that La Salève climb with 50 kilometers to go. Yes, would it have been better if it's 20 kilometers before the final climb instead of 35? Probably. But they got to work with what they have. And first of all, Plateau de Solaison coming to the Tour de France after being in the Dauphiné where Fuglsang won first, I think, in 2015. Pure guess. Luke will have to look at that. But Le Salève is a climb where it's so incredibly steep, reminds me of Choré de Cati from the Vuelta a bit. It's an actual rampa in Humana to the point that...
it's harder than Marie Blanc, right?
Yeah. This is where, if you want, you can explode the race completely on that climb. The question is what happens afterwards if you do it. That's the fascinating part. And I'd like to believe that in this era of cyclists, if Pogacar has 2 minutes in GC and Visma needs to find a way to try something in the rest of this Tour de France, that they don't just skip over a stage like this where there's opportunity to try and exploit it with 50 kilometers to go before the final climb starts and try and create chaos. That's fascinating to me. So I think this is really good stage design, but the outcome will depend on whether the riders are willing and are able to do something with it. That's the reality of the situation. Stage winner, Patrick?
Tadej Pogacar, most likely. But I agree, it's because let's say UAE bring Del Toro instead of Almeida. Yeah, like Del Toro's getting dropped on that climb because he can't climb on Le Salève.
That's a controversial take.
If it goes above 8%, it's curtains. So
Patrick, did you not see the recent Andorra Criterium where he beat Pogacar in the road race?
I watched Lombardia, and at 6% he was chilling, and then the last 3Ks it went to 8.5%. Boom. So,
bro, if you can podium the Giro, you can climb. Let's not pretend that climbing means you have to be able to do 7 watt per kilo for 40 minutes.
My list of riders that can climb. 1.5.
There's 3. 1.5.
3.
Pogacar and half of Vingegaard.
Yeah, it's Pogacar and Vingegaard in summer. They can climb.
And even that's questionable.
Livovitz and only on long Alpine they can climb, but yeah. I forgot Juan Ayuso exists.
Yep, Juan Ayuso wins stage 9, and I don't think he's going to the Tour de France.
Trekker got Pedersen. No, I think he... Benji,
he should go to the Tour de France.
Why do you think he transferred?
I'm just joking.
This is the point.
I think he should do all 3 Grand Tours, to be honest. Honestly,
yeah, this is not a good stage. This is not a good stage for Ayuso.
I don't think so either.
Not a good stage for him. Good stage for Onley. It's good. We stage
can
for the
say
Hobbits.
Whatever we want. It's a mountain stage of 12 kilometers at 9%. Tadej Pogacar wins if the breakaway does not win. There's no other outcome here.
Yeah, but I more mean in the battle for the podium or whatever, white jersey. I think it's a really good stage for the really light guys, evidently, because it's so steep. On the other hand, then we have the second rest day. Take us to stage 16, Benji.
Stage 16 is the biggest disappointment in its entire Tour de France. It's a 25.5 kilometer time trial starting in Evian-les-Bains. Pretty sure Evian's a water brand in Belgium. Then we've got Tournon-les-Bains at the finish. Tournon sounds like a tuna brand.
It's a water brand also.
No.
Yep, go on.
It's not. It's only in Belgium. This climb, this time trial starts with a 9.5 kilometer climb, which is basically 4%. So it's a fast-paced climb. That's important to note. Then there's I'd like to believe, fast-paced descent for the next 6 kilometers roughly, before we have 9 kilometers of flat individual time trial in this entire Tour de France. Patrick, I cannot tell you how disappointed I am that we don't have a 40-kilometer flat time trial in this Tour de France. I'm sorry, but can I just sketch the situation here for a second? Jonas Vingegaard, on what terrain is he better than Tadej Pogacar?
Like,
the real answer is no terrain.
15k, 15% climb.
15k, 15%? That doesn't exist in France. Yeah. On what terrain?
So why haven't France made that?
I told you earlier. Porsche should have made a mountain. But no, on a serious note, on what terrain is Remco Evenepoel better than Tadej Pogacar?
Flat TT.
So the only terrain on which a rider is better outside of flat sprint stages than Tadej Pogacar is a flat time trial, and I see Prudhomme and that route making guy that Gouvenu, the guy that can't make straight sprints finishes. I'm sorry, they're yapping for a day and a half now about, we're trying to make it as backloaded as possible so that it's not obvious that they're not saying Tadej Pogacar, but it's not obvious that it's done so early in the race. The opportunity of making a stage that is better for one rider than Pogacar is a flat time trial, and then they don't do it.
Or Hilly TT.
This time trial is not terrible for Remco Evenepoel either, but it's still a 25 kilometer time trial with 9 kilometers of flat. I'm sorry.
I think Vingegaard is better than Pogacar in time trial bike TTs with steep hills.
Yeah, but...
Which this is not. But I think... And the Dauphiné, he beat him in the Dauphiné on that parcours.
I'm not taking in that Dauphiné at any point in my entire life.
What, so Pog wasn't good the next 2 days?
We will... I choose to ignore that time trial in any analysis.
We can't have it both ways. This is like... When
people like... People can have bad days.
No, Pogacar doesn't have bad days.
He had bad days.
This is like in 2023.
2 years ago.
2023, everyone's like, he's a COVID-19 patient, 0 on Col de la Loza. That's why. And then he does 6.5 for 20 on Le Markstein 2 days later. It's like, which is it? Which is it?
Hey, I have always held the point that people can have bad days.
He didn't have a bad day.
Equipment or person.
I think on the steep, I think he struggles on the TT bike on steep climbs. That's why he used a road bike in the uphill TT in Périgueux. But this isn't that. This is a 4% climb average without Rampas. So I think Pog just wins it anyway.
I
think Remco's not even here by this point.
Jesus Christ. We went from going for GC to winning a breakaway stage to not being here after stage 16. What are we doing? I think if Remco's here, he can still win this time trial.
Yeah.
9 kilometers at 4% is TT bike.
Yeah.
Remco territory still. So I'm going Remco Evenepoel win stage 16. I'm just saying that it is really disappointing to me that there's no long time trials anymore in the sport of cycling.
I know.
Are we becoming cycling traditionalists? A few years ago, we were the ones, who cares? And now we're both like, where's the long time trials? Where's the normal team time trials? Where's the 200 kilometer mountain stages?
I was hoping for a 200. I was hoping for 12 pure sprint stages.
Pataki style.
A 35k TTT just on big roads, and then like a 50k ITT, and then I was hoping for like a 230. I was hoping that the Queen stage was 230. And it was the last day, 230 Ks, 7,000 meters climbing.
Imagine if you've got this entire same parcours, but the last Queen stage is 230 kilometers. Tour de France looks better already.
I agree, yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I think Pog wins stage 16 because it's actually not that hard to climb. And in the stage 20, the Nice TT on that sort of gradient, he was very strong.
Having just 9 flat kilometers in an entire Tour de France, individual time trial kilometers, is a bigger crime towards France than stealing some crown jewels from the Louvre.
They had to bring me in. They're like...
To find the crown jewels?
Yeah, I had to solve the crime.
Who did it?
Well, I'm not going to tell you. I'm in the middle of investigating.
So that's why... Wait, no. Where were you on the day where the crown jewels were stolen, Patrick?
In transit. I was moving. I was around.
You have proof of that?
No.
You were moving away from the crime scene.
Stage 17 from Chambéry, the headquarters of Decathlon AG2R to Voiron. This normally... I think this is a sprint stage because it has to be. I think it's a sprint stage. Normally I'd say it's a transition stage, but the sprinters have been here for so long and they've got nothing else until stage 21. It's the only reason you'd stay in the race if you're a sprinter. So I think
they have stage 21.
You mean if it's like neutralized or protest.
But it's Montmartre, no?
Yeah. But like
So
a sprinter
I'm not
can
sure they
survive
have
the new
stage
Montmartre.
21. The new Montmartre. Okay, we'll get into
but
that.
like, yeah, they can survive that. But yeah,
Okay.
I think this is a sprint. I'm going with uphill sprint. Yeah, Dali.
Okay. I think that's a very good pick. I'm going with Jasper Philipsen, stage 17 winner. Stage 18 is... Starts in Voiron, 185 kilometers, finishes on Orsières-Merlet. Is Orsières-Merlet the finish where Guillaume Martin won? No, podiumed behind Roglic or something? I swear Guillaume Martin attacked on that climb. Yeah.
Guillaume Martin was forced by COVID to not over-race himself, and then he came out of the lockdown actually in good shape.
Yeah. But anyway, this stage has a climb after 20 kilometers, so a breakaway formation climb, I would say, and that breakaway formation climb is... It says 12 kilometers at 5.5%, but there's an uitloper on top, a extension to the climb, which falls that uphill for another 10 kilometers. So this shouts breakaway formation climb to me, and the rest of the stage shouts breakaway as well, because it's basically up and down throughout the stage with a finish on Orsières-Merlet, which is 7k at 7%. This is a breakaway victory for me. Or UAE controls, which they could UAE technically do.
They could do it, yeah.
But I don't actually expect them to do it.
It depends on the race situation, but indeed, if UAE want the stage for Pog, they'll try to control it and he can win. Otherwise, yeah, it's a good climbing breakaway option.
For Tom Pidcock.
Yeah, it could be any climb. The best climber that had a bad luck in week 1 fell out of GC, and then they're going for it. So I'll go.
It's not the hardest climb though. Del Toro.
It's
You're really hammering on the Del Toro can't climb take, are you?
He can climb. It's 6.8%.
Okay.
No, I'm saying on the random stage to Bordeaux, there's like a crosswind split and he missed. I don't know. I think it's like maybe Ayuso, Del Toro, yeah. J-Vine.
Okay.
Soler.
I'll accept it. Raul Garcia Pierna? No, okay, I guess not.
Oh, yes, it is a very good climb for Raul Garcia Pierna.
It is.
Yeah, it's a very good stage for him. Yeah, I'm changing my pick to him. Okay, stage 19. It's 129 Ks from Gap to Alpe d'Huez. And it starts with 5.5 Ks at 6.8%. Then they do the Col du Noyer, which is 7.3 Ks, 8%. That was used as the final climb in stage 17 of the Tour de France 2024 when Carapaz won. Then there's a long rolling valley. Then they do a warm-up, 5.6 Ks, 6.2% descent. And then the Alpe d'Huez, 14 Ks, 8%. Short stage, pretty easy stage. And I think they're going to go fast up Alpe d'Huez. And yeah.
It's basically almost an Alpe d'Huez Unipuerto stage. It's as close as it gets to it. You've got breakaway formation climbs, but it's so short of a stage that this is a controllable stage for the likes of UAE or whoever wants to control it, but likely UAE Team Emirates. So this is for me, Tadej Pogacar wins on Alpe d'Huez. I think the KOM of Alpe d'Huez is in the hands of Pantani, maybe, but
yeah,
that's a time that I'm like, last year I expected...
Don't break it.
I don't think so, because last year I expected them to be closer to Rison Otakam as well than they were Pogacar.
Yeah.
And I don't expect Pogacar to beat Pantani's time on Alpe d'Huez here.
I don't think so either. I think you'd have to use it. You'd have to use I think going from the bottom, he won't be able to do it. Because they didn't improve this year, the climbing speeds compared to last year.
He would need that dude on his scooter from Dwars door Vlaanderen to be as Dernier. Yeah.
But that's why if he goes with the leader at the bottom and then goes solo, I don't think he can do it. I think you do need to draft for a bit longer, halfway at least. So, yeah, I'm not sure we'll break it. But yeah, Pog's the favourite to win that stage. All right, stage 20, the jewel of the race.
The jewel of the race, the ones that Patrick has stolen from the Louvre, is right here. We've got 172 kilometers starting Le Bourgeoison. We've got the first climb being Col de Croix de Fer, which is already a big climb. That is 24.2 kilometers at 5%. That is the first climb. We've got a small valley 12 kilometers before we get to the second climb, which is a combination of 2 climbs. We know it from the Granon stage, Col du Télégraphe, and then Col du Galibier. So Télégraphe is 12k 7%, directly followed by, just from the top, by the way, the Col du Galibier, 17.5 kilometers, 6.8%. So stuff can happen on this stage already at this point. Then we've got a smaller climb towards the finish, which is the Col de Sarenne, 7.2 kilometers, 8.3%, which that tops still with 15 kilometers to go. Then you've got downhill, uphill, downhill, uphill. The last 4 kilometers at 6%. But somehow, that last 4 kilometers at 6% is considered finishing on Alpe d'Huez. I think that's technically it's true, but I think that's a crime against the name of Alpe d'Huez. It's a good stage design. I like it. Stuff's going to happen on the Galibier, I believe. But I'm sorry. You can't call a 4-kilometer climb Alpe d'Huez. That is illegal.
I think this stage would be perfect if there was if the finish was slightly harder, or if they made it, just longer.
Oh,
just make it
like Granon style.
I
don't know. I disagree.
More like the Trecimi de Lavaredo, sort of like a steeper finish.
For me, I would have preferred the stage more if there was more of a gap between Croix de Fer and Galibier Telegraphe. Because then there's more time for a breakaway with potential satellite riders to get a gap to get over the Galibier in the first place to be valuable either on the last climb or in the last 15 kilometers. That's impossible here, I think.
Is this the only stage where the penultimate climb is longer than 20 minutes?
No, Tourmalet.
No, but that doesn't count, that valley.
Whoa,
the Tourmalet is the last climb.
But I'm not having this shit. No. Respect the 18 kilometer 4% climb, buddy.
They're on a fucking highway and that's not a climb.
It literally goes uphill.
There is really no classic mountain stages at all.
No.
I guess you can say the Grand Ballon. Yeah, the Grand Ballon. Fair enough.
Yeah, stage 14?
Yeah, stage 14, but that has a recovery period in it.
Yeah, but it's also, we're talking about a 150 kilometer, 170 kilometer stage. I'm sorry, but where's the Ciclismo?
There's one classic HC stage with long climbs. That's crazy. Yeah, obviously, if you're behind in GC, you got to try something on the Galibier. You can't wait for a 7k 8% climb. The Sarenne. And so we could see this is the this is like the Granon stage, but they have a slightly different finish and slightly easier finish, I guess. It's different to the Granon. I think the Granon stage was shorter. And
did not have Croix de Fer.
Didn't have Croix de Fer, but had a longer flat break formation. So I think it's going to be a good stage, and we'll see who wins the Tour de France after this.
I think so as well. But we have to talk about, I think this is the perfect time to do so, the effect that they're trying to create. Prudhomme and Govenu have said it. I've mentioned it already. They're trying to postpone the time at which the race has been decided. That's how they're advertising their route creation here. First of all, Plateau de Solaison, Markstein, the Tourmalet stage on stage 6. That combination alone is enough to already make a pretty clear view of who's going to win this race. You will never know certain before stage 20. That's true. But if Pogacar has 5 minutes before stage 20, which is not impossible, then the race is already decided before stage 20. And on the other side of the coin, by making the race softer up to stage 20, you're creating a race that could potentially be decided later than earlier, but you're also creating a race that has less terrain for the opponents of Pogacar to consistently hit at Pogacar on, making it, in my opinion, just as likely for Pogacar to win this race. And I have nothing against Pogacar winning the Tour de France, but I don't think their strategy, if that is the goal you're trying to make, works. Every parkour you can make is Pogacar territory.
I think the only difference is to like have harder climbs earlier, and then you're more likely to induce chaos where he's isolated earlier. Because like it is possible to drop a Wellens and Narvaez. So, but yeah, like what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do on that Alpe d'Huez stage 19? I mean, nothing.
That's
Nothing.
utter woke nonsense.
You just wait, and then everyone has a Whopper kilo test for half an hour. So, yeah, stage 20 could be good, and we'll see who wins. It could even be if it comes back together and nothing. I mean, if Pog is kind of ahead, and then he's over it like this year, or just not good enough to drop Vingegaard, then you see the guys going for third. Lipovitz attacking. I think it's a great Lipovitz stage, so I'm going to go Lipovitz wins this stage with Pog and Vingegaard kind of just riding it in.
Okay. I'm going with Felix Gall wins from the breakaway.
Oh, yeah, it's an uphill start too. Suits him. Stage
21, that's yours.
From Tory to Paris. We have the
that's the Conservative Party in the UK, buddy.
They brought Montmartre back. It was much to the applause. There was applause in the crowd for this. Everyone loved the Montmartre stage. 130 Ks. They do 3 repetitions of the same, the Côte de la Butte Montmartre, which is 1K 5.5%. Cobble climb. But it's further from the finish. So now it's 17 Ks from the finish. This is a sprint stage normally. I mean, if you're a sprinter, you should be able to get over a 1K 5% climb. 17 Ks from the finish.
I have no clue what you just said. I'm sorry. I actually ignored you completely.
Like, Jordi Mayers should be able to survive this climb that far from the finish.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if it rains like this year, then the race is different.
Yeah, if it rains, if it opens up, if GC is neutralized, it could be different. But yeah, I think this is a sprint, and so I'm going with. Yeah, I'll pick a Bora. I'll pick 2 Boras in a row. Jordi Mayers.
I'm going with Arnaud Delis.
Fair enough. Okay, that's the route reaction. It's very, very different to this year in terms of there's no what I would call hectic technical stages, because even the Barcelona one, it's big roads coming into that circuit, and it's
that's
not
okay,
like.
Though.
To me, that's fine. Eventually by the Toulouse stage, I was over it. I've seen 6 puncher stages now. I'm good. There's a lot of. I think they're trying to have more mountain break stages for different winners, and that's what I think will happen. It all depends on how hungry UAE are.
Yeah,
it's backloaded. It's really backloaded. Obviously, you got to be sharp for Tourmalet and stage 10, the Massif Central stage, of course. But yeah, from 14 onwards. I mean, 14, 15. Then you got TT. Then Orsier Millet uphill sprint. Then Alpe d'Huez stage 20, it's really backloaded.
It's really backloaded, but it's also like, to me, it's backloaded in the sense that I think the last 2 weeks of 2025 were harder. They just reduced week 1. It's not that they made the last 2 weeks a lot harder.
So 2025, we had, loads of puncher stages where in the end there weren't actually big gaps except for the individual time trial. And then, there weren't gaps. And then stage 12, 12, 13, 14, tour was done. So it wasn't that different.
It's just a softer Tour de France. It's not a bad thing, because that's where riders were saying that they were almost dead after the Tour de France 2025 and how hard it was. So it's not terrible to have that. Maybe that opens up more tactical possibilities that more riders have something to do something on. But I can't. The feeling that this Tour de France route reaction creates to me is meh. It's like, it's not, it doesn't shout, oh, we're going to have the most epic Tour de France in the world. The terrain is there for riders to make it an enjoyable race, but they're going to have to work for it. That's how I look at this parkour. Like, stage 10, for example, the terrain is there to attack with 35 kilometers to go on the last 2 kilometers of Puy-Marie. Or they could play more passively and go on Pertus. That's also possible. That stage could have been better, like you say, if it was the 2024 edition. That's already a point of view there. Next to that, the time trial for me, I don't like the fact that it's so short. I like the idea of like stage 15, but it's the kind of stage where it depends on the riders to make it work. It depends on the riders to crash out on Le Salève. Maybe Ineos does it like they've done, like they did this year at the Giro a couple of times, I think, smashing a climb in the middle of the race, hoping something would snap. But like the Alpe d'Huez stage 19, there's not much else you can do outside of pacing towards Alpe d'Huez. What per kilo test on Alpe d'Huez. So I think the Le Salève and the Puy-Marie stage are the only 2 stages where I feel like there's tactically much possible outside of just have best legs.
Pretty much, yeah. And, I mean, the Le Salève stage, 183 Ks. It's not that long, but it's probably going to be harder than it looks, especially if there's a long break formation on that rolling terrain. I've counted just now 9 sprints or versatile sprint stages. I didn't count stage 2 in that, but I did count some of the transition stages which a hungry versatile sprint team might want to control, like Trek. Could be strong enough to do so with Verona. So there's a fair few sprints here.
Yeah.
I don't see much for punchers, frankly. I don't see much.
2 stages?
So, yeah,
maybe?
Yeah, but there is the big carrot of taking yellow in stage 2 if you stay close enough in the team time trial, which will be difficult though. I mean, it will be really difficult to stay with.
Pogacar's the best puncher. Outside of Van der Poel, maybe.
Respect Narvaez.
Well, he's in his team and he's his domestique. Pogacar's not going to lead out Narvaez for stage 2 of the Tour de France.
Though. He's out of contract.
He's not going. No, I'm not having this shit. He's getting paid enough to ride in front of Pogacar.
They're not allowed to sign Cosnefroy.
You think Cosnefroy will show up and try to win stage 2?
Imagine Cosnefroy, Narvaez, Wellens lead out on stage 2.
Oh. I don't think Cosnefroy is going to the Tour de France looking at the parkour, because that's a guy that can actually not climb.
He's a classic puncher.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Narvaez also just came 13th in the Tour de France, so I mean,
he's not a classic puncher.
True.
He thinks he is, because he skipped Ronda for it.
I've lost my train of thought.
What's your podium?
Yeah, I'll go Pog, Vingegaard, and third. I don't think only repeat. Lipovitz.
Okay.
I don't think it's that good a parkour for Lipovitz. I don't think Del Toro will come third.
I am going
Sex ass.
Okay. Ooh, that's nice. That's nice. Especially the pronunciation.
I think it's a pretty good route for sex ass.
I think Pogacar wins the Tour de France. I think there's a world in which Lipovitz finishes second ahead of Vingegaard, on the caveat that Jonas wins the Giro.
Oh, like, okay. See what you mean.
I'm not saying that Lipovitz is a better GC rider than Jonas. I'm saying that after winning the Giro, he's a bit tired. Danish people, don't come to my house, please.
Not sure it's that good for Lipovitz.
I think it is.
Can Lipovitz climb?
He's not one of your 1.5 riders, so apparently not. Can Lipovitz climb? Bro, just top treat the Tour de France.
Yeah, I'm going with sex ass for third.
I'm happy for you. I hope so.
Yeah, that'd be sick. White jersey, third. The France go crazy.
Honest, how do we look at this parkour?
Is Lipovitz really a better climber than sex ass?
Yes. In the future, no?
Well, this is in the future. They're holding this next year.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's true. It is the future. But are we underrating the possibility of Almeida potentially podiuming this Tour de France?
I don't think he does it. I think he goes Giro.
I don't think the route shouts Almeida either.
I think they send Almeida to the Giro and Del Toro does the Tour.
I hope so. Giro de Almeida, come on.
Yeah, I think
Almeida versus Vingegaard versus Remco at the Giro.
Be pretty sick, actually.
I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm so ready.
Good. Roglic too, a pissed off Roglic.
Well, he'd have to domestique for Remco.
Derek G is a privateer. Derek G on Bardiani.
Privateer? On Bardiani?
It'd be so good.
No.
Alrighty.
I'm hoping that is resolved and we can see Derek G, because that Giro, if there's 2 long time trials, would fit him. If. I'm saying that Giro would fit him. We don't know the parkour.
Yeah, if. So I actually don't mind the route, mainly because really the riders make the route. I know that's a cliche. The GC situation makes the route. There's enough space to attack here. You know, if Pogacar is behind for whatever reason, he'll go on stage 14. But yeah, I don't mind the route. I give it a 5 out of 10.
I give it about a 3. I think it's
you really don't like it.
I'm not saying I don't like it. I just think it could be a lot better. That's my thought.
What that's why it's a climbs 3. We have? Just up the Wes, right? And Galibier.
Wes. I like Plateau de Solaizon joining though.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
But I'm sorry, David, Aldo have been twice in this race.
Yeah, but it's
just
not
as like a little
twice.
Bump on stage 20, it's a gimmick.
It's not actually twice, yeah. Okay. That's our recap or preview of the Tour de France 2026 route that was revealed. I don't know when the Giro one's coming out. The Vuelta one normally comes out in January.
What about Chris Froome, Patrick? Okay, let's end it there.
What about him? Yeah, what about him? Who's your... The world changes faster than we think. The world is constantly moving under our feet. And, you know, the more things you think are staying the same, the more they're changing. So Lipovitz third this year, things change fast in cycling. Never forget that.
Exactly.
Right,
that is exactly why.
Yeah, I picked Sexas.
No love for Oscar Ronley anymore, is what you're saying.
I think it's tough. Because, it's tough against...
Not the right parkour?
I think the parkour's fine. I think it's actually good for a climber who's a bad time trialist like him.
I think so too.
But I think it's a good parkour for only. It's going to be tough.
Vauquelin.
Okay, thanks for listening. Nah, Solaizon, curtains.
I think he can definitely top 10 this Tour de France again.
Okay. I mean, who can top 10?
Don't look at me like I just said something really unreasonable.
No, it's not unreasonable, but he already did it.
Well, I'm sorry, but where was Ineos in the top 10 of the Tour de France this year?
Yeah, Aronson won 2 stages. That's better than top 10.
Yeah, but it's better to have Aronson win stages.
Luke, is this a good route for Aronson?
Can't win 2 stages.
And is this a good route for Dutch riders? Who have they got? Olav Koy? Oh, Olav Koy's on decathlon. Oh, no, fucks. Seychelles is going to get sold. They're going to sell Seychelles.
They're going to have 5 sprint leadouts for Olav Koy and 6 us with 1 helper in Prudhomme.
Callum Scottson, you got a long 3 weeks in July ahead of you, buddy. the only like all-round climber that Seychelles has.
When it comes to the Tour de France FUM route reaction, do we do that in this podcast or do we do that separately? What's your take? Because we'll do it
separately. We'll do it separately. Okay. I gotta go.
And I'm hungry.
You're hungry. All right. Thanks for listening as always. We'll see you with the women's reaction in a couple of days. Ciao, ciao, ciao.